Today's topic, how to find a husband. Today I want to share specific tips and strategies with you that you can use to find a husband. And from my experience as a coach, I also want to share the biggest traps that you shouldn't fall into if you want to find the right husband. So let's get started with the first very important advice that I've learned from coaching so many women in Skype coaching sessions. Stop looking in all the wrong places. Is it possible to find your husband on Tinder? Yes, it's possible, but is it likely that you will find your husband on Tinder? Not really. Tinder, even though a lot of men and a lot of women all over the world don't want to believe it, is not a dating app. It's designed as a hookup app. And I've coached a lot of women who met guys on Tinder and who then complained in a Skype coaching session that this guy never called them again and that this guy doesn't want to have a relationship. And to be honest, that's like complaining that a guy reads books when you meet him at a book club. If you meet a guy on a hookup app, then the likelihood that he's just looking for a quick hookup is very, very high. And in the same way, I, for example, have a female friend who recently finally broke up with the guy she was dating for 2 years, and she constantly complained to me that all he was thinking about was drinking and partying, and that he was not the right guy to settle down with. And then I just looked at her and said, yeah, well, I mean, you met him in a club. What do you expect? Back then he was the type of guy who went to the club every weekend twice on Friday and Saturday, and he was always drinking. And then, shock horror, he continued this behavior in the relationship. And I can already hear the screams of people who will listen to this episode and then say, yeah, but I found my husband on Tinder, and yeah, but I met my husband in a club. Yes, like I said before, these success stories exist. But that doesn't mean that you should primarily focus your search on places where it's very unlikely that you will meet your future husband. Because if you try to meet your husband in places where men frequently go to, who are definitely not looking for a wife and who are not husband material, then you will end up dating men who are not looking for a wife and who are not husband material. So instead of swiping until your fingers are bleeding, and instead of going to the club every week even though you don't like drinking and you love to go to bed early, go to networking events, go to meetups, and sign up on dating sites that are specifically designed for people who are looking for a long-term relationship. And then when you are on a date with a guy, give him at least 1 second chance, that's important. Because some of my Skype coaching clients, they nexted guys way too fast. Just because a guy is not funny on the first date doesn't mean that he's not funny. He's just nervous, he's just insecure. And this is something that I can tell you from my own experience. Because there used to be a time when I was very shy and very insecure. And as a result, I wasn't able to express my playfulness, my creativity, my funny side on the first date. I always needed 1 or 2 dates to warm up, and then I was able to allow myself to be the funny and playful guy that I am. And if you reject a guy too early, just because you have the feeling, it was kind of awkward. I mean, yes, of course, if he makes you feel uncomfortable because he's too direct or because he's too straightforward, then I get it. But if he's just insecure, if he's just a little bit shy, then I would say give him at least a second chance. Because you might be surprised that this guy might be, I don't say he will, but he might be exactly what you're looking for. He just wasn't able to express himself fully and authentically on the very first date because he was too nervous and too insecure. And then discuss all the must-haves and the deal breakers very early on in the relationship. This is so crucial. Do you want to have children? Yes or no? It doesn't matter if the answer is yes or no. I won't judge you for anything, no matter if you want to have children or you don't want to have children. Both options are perfectly fine. But you have to talk about these things. And this is something that amazes me. How many people, and both men and women do that, start serious relationships and even stay in serious relationships for years without ever talking about these things. and while being completely incompatible. And then after 5, 6, or 7 years, the heartbreak is big because then they find out, hey, well, I didn't want to have children, but my partner wants to have children, or the other way around. These are things that you talk about on the first, second, or third date, but third date is really the latest. But so many people don't discuss these things at all. And then they end up very, very disappointed and resentful after a couple of years because they find out, hey, my partner didn't want the same things. Well, if you talk about these things early on, then you don't have to worry about it. Yes, he might reject you, or yes, you might reject him because you're not perfect for each other, and that's okay. But then you know it after the first date, instead of finding it out after 10 years. And when it comes to talking about these things, it's also important that you find out if he's willing to get married. If you are looking for a husband and he gives you the I don't believe in marriage talk, well, then he's not the right guy for you. And please don't fall into this trap that so many of my Skype coaching clients fell into and think that you can turn this guy into somebody who absolutely wants to marry you. This is not the right guy for you. If you meet a guy who's 100% sure that he doesn't want to get married, then he doesn't want to get married. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If he chooses not to get married, it's totally okay. But then he's not the right guy for you. And now you might be asking yourself, who is the right guy for me? Well, when I look back at some of my Skype coaching clients who've met the right man and who I've helped to get the right man and to keep him, I can honestly tell you, and that's something that you might not want to hear, that looks are not as important as you think. So many of my Skype coaching clients are obsessed with the idea of finding a man who's 6 feet tall. Honestly, here in Europe, we don't even have this obsession with 6 feet tall because we don't measure in feet. That's just something that I've heard from my American coaching clients. And I honestly don't know what it is in America that everybody is so fixated on the 6 feet mark. I have no idea. But well, as a German, I might not be able to understand it. But what I understand is that this superficial limit that a lot of women use when it comes to the criteria for their perfect man eliminates a lot of suitable partners. And I also know from my experience as a dating coach that a lot of the men that the women I coached ended up dating were not 6 feet tall, even though it was on their list. And when I then asked them, yeah, but he's not 6 feet tall, they just looked at me and said, I mean, doesn't matter. Did I ever say that? And this is very important to realize. I mean, yes, just had a funny thought, but it's actually true. We shrink when we age, and if you marry that guy when he's 6 feet tall, and then when he gets older, he's no longer 6 feet tall, will you divorce him? I know it sounds weird when you think about it, but a lot of women told me about their 6 feet tall mark. And of course, you should be attracted to him. That's important. But when it comes to you finding the right husband, it's so much more important that you have the same values and that you are compatible, because your looks and even your height fade, but your compatibility stays. And then when you find a guy who you are compatible with, you have to make him so obsessed with you that he'll want to marry you straight away. And you can do that by activating his hero instinct, because then he will feel like a hero whenever he thinks about proposing to you and marrying you. And if you want to know how 7 of my amazing coaching clients activated the hero instinct in the guy that they wanted to date and then ended up dating, then you can check out the link in the description and find out more about how they did it. And yes, you can use the techniques and the strategies that you learn if you click on the link in the description and read this page till the very end, no matter how old you are. And this brings me to the next point. Remember that you are never too old to find a husband. A lot of my Skype coaching clients are in their 40s, in their 50s, and I even had Skype coaching clients in their 60s. And I've helped women in their 50s and 60s to find love. So yes, it's possible. You are never too old. Just because society tells you that when you hit 35 that it's impossible for you to find love doesn't mean that it's true. Unless you believe what society tells you and you then go on dates with this resentful and angry and bitter attitude, then yes, then it will be very, very hard for you to find love. But if you realize that you are never too old to find a husband, and you then go on dates with this positive and playful attitude, and the guy who sits opposite of you or next to you feels your love for life and your love for man, then it will be very easy for you to find love, especially if you use the techniques and strategies that you discover if you click on the link in the description and you then make him obsessed with you by activating his hero instinct. And just because the last guy was terrible doesn't mean the next guy is terrible. I always want you to be open-minded, and I also want you to go on dates with an open heart. See every date as an adventure. Don't see it as something that you have to drag yourself to just to somehow find a husband. Because if you go out with this attitude, then you will repel men. But if you go out with the attitude of, hey, let's have fun, this is an adventure, I'm playful, he's playful, I love men, I love myself, and I love life, that's how you attract the most amazing man. And that's also how you will then attract the man that you want to marry. And also in this process, don't be afraid of blind dates. If you, for example, tell your friends that you are looking for somebody to settle down with, I mean, maybe they know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. Sometimes you can get lucky with blind dates. Not always, but sometimes. But always remember that you miss every shot you don't take. And then when you find a guy who's suitable or who might be suitable as a husband, travel together before you live together, and live together before you think about getting married. Because every stage of the relationship is a new test. If you first travel together, this already shows you how it would be if you live together. And if you then live together, this shows you how it would be to live together as a married couple. Take it one step at a time. And the last tip I want to share with you, but that's just my personal rule, and if you want to break this rule, that's totally up to you. My experience as a coach just tells me that the most successful marriages are the ones where both partners allowed themselves to get to know each other and where they decided to wait for at least a couple of years before they got married. I would wait at least, and I mean at least 3 years. My parents, for example, they waited 6 years and they are still going strong. Why is it so important that you wait, and why do I believe that it's a big mistake to marry somebody after just 1 year? Here's why. It's actually a scientific reason. The honeymoon phase, the phase where you run around with your rose-colored glasses and you see him as the perfect guy. You think everything he does is perfect and he's just so perfect. This can last up to 3 years. And if you marry him after 1 year, that's like marrying somebody while you are on drugs, to be honest, because you are still in this infatuation stage, in this, oh, I'm so in love and oh, rose-colored glasses stage. And this can lead to a very painful awakening after a couple of years, once the honeymoon phase is finally over, and then you married him in the honeymoon phase, but you have him as your husband when you no longer are in the honeymoon phase. And that's why it's so important, at least in my opinion, as a couple to go through the honeymoon phase and to also find out if you still love each other after the honeymoon phase. And when you then decide, yes, I still love you, you still love me, we want to spend the rest of our life together, now you are clear thinking and now you can make the logical decision to get married. And if you enjoyed watching this video, if you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section below. Share your opinion, share your thoughts. I would love to hear from you. And I would love it even more if you would hit the subscribe button and smash that notification bell so that you get notified whenever I release a new video for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video.